So every few months I have a few people in Germany who send me different letters. I purchase them, a few different dealers who pretty much expertise in this. And I received a few the other day and I just thought, I would like to show them. I was thinking of putting them on Patreon or whatever, just kind of going through them because I use some letters for my videos, but I have a few unopened ones. I'll translate them. And yeah, obviously many of these obviously are unopened, so the sender just closed literally the lid of the letter and then we have them somehow, which is mental. So we will open them together, go through them, what they say. I don't know if, it could be awful, could be just normal letters, I don't know. But obviously because they're German letters, there's could be like an 80 to 90% chance, the sender of it has died, you don't know, and yeah. So I guess we'll open them together, see what they say. At first glance, just a regular field post envelope, but when you look a little closer, it becomes something else entirely. You can see the Feldpost mark clearly printed on the front that tells us it went through the German military mail system. Just underneath, we've got a Feldpost number 18614/E. That number is traceable, and when you look it up, it matches exactly to a unit inside the SS Totenkopf Infantry Regiment Theodor Eicke. On the left, there's the Waffen-SS unit stamp, when if you look closely, you can even make out the eagle and swastika seal with the name Theodor Eicke wrapped around it. That alone confirms this wasn't just any soldier. This was a man inside one of the most brutal SS formations of the war, the Totenkopf Division. February 28th, 1940. Dear Matthias, I received your dear letter today with great joy, for which I thank you heartily. I will never forget you and hope the same from you. I hope that you are satisfied with the small photo for the time being. You cannot imagine how I look forward to a small photo of you, and even more so to when I can see and speak to you in person. Yes, I will be coming out in 8 days or 14 days. Perhaps you will get leave sooner, you just have to write to me when you are coming. Please go to the gate and ask for me when you come. And say, you need to speak to me urgently. You will surely find your way. I will close now, so that my letter still reaches you. Greetings from your Trudy. Heartfelt thanks for your lovely card. Now the letter inside is dated February 1940, months earlier than the postmark. And here's the twist. It wasn't written by the woman on the return address. The letter was signed by someone else entirely. Trudy. Which means Matthias kept this older letter with him, possibly bundled inside this envelope, as he moved across Europe, from Austria to occupied France. And then there's the photo, a black and white portrait of Matthias himself, cigarette between his fingers, uniform sharp, eyes tired, looking away. The Totenkopf skull visible on his collar. This is the man the letter reached. The name on the envelope is Paula Auflehner, written from the women's ward of a hospital in Wels, Austria. At the time, Wels was part of the Third Reich. This wasn't a military facility, it was a civilian hospital. And Paula doesn't list a rank, she's not a nurse in uniform, at least not officially, just her name and a ward number. So who was she? We don't know. There's no record confirming her identity, no rank, no family link mentioned. She could have been a nurse, a girlfriend, maybe even a sister, though the tone of the envelope doesn't suggest anything formal. But what's most interesting is that the letter inside wasn't written by Paula at all. It was written months earlier by another woman, Trudy, in February 1940. That means one of two things. Either Paula was sending on Trudy's old letter, or, more likely, Matthias kept Trudy's letter with him and simply reused the envelope from Paula to store it, which opens the more human possibility that Trudy was someone deeply personal, a lover, a woman he hadn't seen in months. And this letter, this single piece of paper, was something he kept with him across countries and campaigns, even as his division moved through occupied France. The unit stamp Waffen-SS/SST Infantry Regiment Theodor Eicke directly ties him to the Totenkopf Infantry Regiment of the division, leaving no ambiguity about his formation or branch of service. His rank and role, Sanitätsunteroffizier, identify him as a frontline medic NCO, not rear area support. This means his service was embedded with infantry units, moving and fighting with them rather than operating from fixed medical facilities. The letter's field post routing and regimental stamp show that Matthias was already fully integrated into the Totenkopf structure during its post-France reorganization phase. At this stage, the division was not actively fighting, but recovering from heavy losses sustained during the French campaign. The presence of a medical NCO in regimental correspondence strongly suggests continued operational readiness and preparation, not demobilization. This was a transitional period. The division was regrouping, absorbing replacements, and being prepared for future deployment. What makes this letter historically significant is its timing. In July 1940, Totenkopf had just completed its first campaign and was about to begin the path that would define its fate. From 1941 onward, the division would be sent into some of the most destructive theatres of the war. Long, continuous frontline service with minimal rotation, repeated encirclements, and attritional battles that destroyed entire formations. Over the course of the war, the division was effectively annihilated and rebuilt multiple times, with up to 90% of its wartime manpower becoming casualties through death, wounding, or disappearance. Judging purely from what this envelope documents, the unit, the regiment, the date, and the role, Hans Matthias stood at the beginning of one of the highest mortality service paths in the German armed forces. A frontline SS medic attached to an infantry regiment in Totenkopf in mid-1940 faced sustained exposure to combat from the opening of the Eastern Front onward. Statistically and historically, the likelihood of long-term survival for men in this exact category was extremely low. Alright, so here we have another original Feldpost letter. Gefreiter was a junior rank, would roughly a private first class, not a high-ranking officer, just a regular frontline soldier. The Feldpost number 23388 with a D at the end would have been used to route his mail through the military postal system. The letter D likely refers to his specific company or subunit. So he wasn't just in the army, then this code pins him to a particular part of a specific regiment or division. It's addressed to the Kolpings family in Munich at Adlerstrasse 2-7. That's a Catholic institution, part of a long-standing network originally set up to help young workers and students. During the war, places like this were sometimes used as boarding houses, support centres, or even temporary care facilities. So we can't say for sure who the letter was meant for. Well, maybe a priest, maybe someone who had helped him in the past, but it's definitely not a traditional family letter. Eastern Front, April 16th, 1943. Dear friends, finally a few lines from me again. First of all, my heartfelt thanks for the Kriegsblitz. Note likely a newsletter from home work from the month of March. Again and again, one can read about one or two of the brave ones who sacrificed their young heart's blood for the fatherland. 4 long war years are now almost over. How long will it still last? That is the one question we all ask ourselves. The second winter in Russia is now well over, even if there must be a third one. So the day must also come ever closer when, after the victorious end of this war, we can step back into our beloved home with hearts full of gratitude. Many may well think about this, and how will it look by then in beautiful Munich? These are all questions of fate which we humans do not have the power to decide. Health-wise, I am still doing well, which is the main thing. Now the last patch of snow will soon have disappeared, and if it continues like this, the famous mud period will also have an end. The Russian has now probably got his share in the course of the winter. The situation is now very quiet again. We want to hope for the best. Now I wish you all, especially the dear sisters or nurses, a happy Easter festival and continued good luck. Until a happy and healthy reunion, Matthias Hinterholzer. So, based on his Feldpost number, 23388D, we can identify Gefreiter Matthias Hinterholzer with absolute certainty. He was part of the 3rd Company, Grenadier Regiment 19, under the 7th Infantry Division, a regular German Army division, not SS, and here's where it gets even more personal. The 7th Infantry Division was a Bavarian formation originally raised and garrisoned in Munich. That lines up perfectly with the recipient address on the envelope, a Catholic organisation in Munich. This wasn't just a soldier writing home, he was a local boy serving in a local division, alongside men who likely spoke the same dialect, came from the same streets, maybe even the same church pews. This is one of those moments where a small detail, maybe even a return address, connects the private and the military in a very human way. As for where he was when this letter was sent, April 1943, the 7th Infantry Division was dug in near Orel in central Russia. That region was a frozen graveyard of trenches, swampy roads and stalled offensives. Spring had arrived, and with it came the Schlammzeit, the time of mud. Tanks were bogged down, boots sank knee-deep, and supply lines barely moved. But the division wasn't resting. They were holding thin, exposed lines under constant Soviet probing attacks. And unknown to them, they were sitting in the staging zone for something far worse. Within 3 months, the Red Army would launch the largest tank battle in history, the Battle of Kursk. The 7th Infantry Division, still in position near Orel, was thrown into the meat grinder during the German counterattacks and the brutal Soviet offensives that followed. From that summer onward, the division never truly recovered. They were pushed back through Bryansk, through Gomel, through the Pripyat marshes, suffering staggering losses along the way. By the end of the war, what was left of the division was retreating through East Prussia under constant fire. So, let's return to the man, Gefreiter Matthias Hinterholzer, a young Bavarian writing to a Catholic institution in his hometown, serving in a regular infantry division just months before it was chewed up by Kursk and the long Soviet advance. No known awards, no known grave, just a stamp, a date, and a name. Statistically, his odds of survival were grim. By 1945, very few men from the original Grenadier Regiment 19 were still standing. This letter may be all that's left of him. Alright, so here we've got a different kind of letter, not sent to a frontline medic or a hardened soldier. But the name written here is Wolfiananga, probably short for Wolfgang. And judging by the handwriting and the way it's addressed, this wasn't official business, this was personal. Most likely a father writing to his young son back home in Austria. Up top you can see the words SS Feldpost, field mail routed through the SS system. There's a purple stamp with the eagle and swastika. It reads Gendarmerie Kreis Silly. That places the sender in what was then German-occupied Slovenia, stationed with the Rural Police Command. The postmark gives us the exact date, March 19th, 1945, just 7 weeks before Germany surrendered. Now on the back, things take a softer turn. You can see someone, likely the child himself, has scribbled across the paper, 1,5 Einacht multiplizieren Schrift schnell. Simple maths, a note to write fast, little reminders, probably schoolwork, probably nothing more than a boy using his father's envelope as scrap paper. And that's what makes this one different. This wasn't written from a trench. This was a father, somewhere far from home, trying to stay human at the end of a collapsing world. Celje, March 18th, 1945, my dear Wolfgang, my dear Troudy. It is already 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it is Sunday again. I have just darned my socks, and now I want to write to you and have a little chat. When this letter will reach you, I do not know, because today, the railway line was damaged again by aircraft. Children, please watch out for the planes for me and go home quickly when you see them. You know how heavily they fire. I wrote a letter to Mother this morning. I hope you receive the letters at the same time, otherwise one of you may have no letter at all. My children, it will soon be time to dig in the garden again, and Mother will need your help. You can carry the weeds away. Here, the digging has already begun because there is no more snow. While working in the garden, you must always watch out for the planes. Here, they come in very low from behind and shoot. I have already sent 3 parcels of eggs. I hope you have received them. Feeding the animals will soon become very difficult. You will not be able to keep the poultry much longer. Food will become very scarce. You will probably have to eat the poultry at some point. You may not like that, but it cannot be helped. Children, these are not easy times. You will often be hungry and Mother will have little to cook. So you must eat everything properly, even if it does not taste good. My old Mr. Son, Wolfie, are you studying well? Do your homework neatly and learn your multiplication tables properly, all right? You are a fine boy. You must support Mother and always keep yourself together. And you too, my Troudy. Soon you will be a schoolgirl, and you can already help Mother with small tasks. If you always help her, she will also have time for you and you can play and sing together. By the time I come home, you will both have grown taller. I'm already looking forward to seeing my big children. I cannot even imagine how beautiful that moment will be. The train that brings me home one day will surely travel far too slowly for me. But until then, much water will flow through the Enns Valley. Stay good for me until I come back, and always obey Mother properly. Last Sunday, I understood you quite well on the telephone. Next time we will talk a little longer. Mother should just call. I am usually at home anyway. It is so wonderful when I can hear you on the telephone. Isn't it strange that we can speak to each other while being so far apart? Now just a few lines for Mother. Our mail is very slow, isn't it? I'm sorry about the dried peas I sent. I hope they still arrive. Have you received my smoker's ration card yet? Please do not send me any tobacco. I still have some, and tomorrow we will receive more. But be careful not to give it away too freely. Mother, Wolfie and Troudy, many kisses. Your father? This letter was written on March 19th, 1945, just 7 weeks before the end of the Second World War. It was sent from the town of Chile, now known as Celje in Slovenia, by a man named Inanga. He wasn't a soldier on the front lines. He was a father, a husband, and a police officer serving in the rural gendarmerie. At this late stage in the war, men like him were not directing traffic or keeping civilian order. They were assigned to anti-partisan operations, brutal, exhausting work, in a region overrun with resistance fighters and collapsing supply lines. The letter is addressed to 3 people: his young son, Wolfie, his daughter, Troudy, and their mother, his wife. He sent it to Schladming, a small Alpine town deep in central Austria. That address matters. It tells us he had likely sent his family to safety. By 1945, towns like Schladming were far from the air raids and far from the Eastern Front. Inanga, meanwhile, remained behind in the occupied Balkans, holding the line in a losing war. His letter is filled with ordinary affection. He tells his son to study hard, learn his multiplication tables, and be strong for his mother. He tells his daughter that soon she'll be old enough to help with household chores, and that if she does, her mother will have more time to play and sing with her. He worries about food shortages, about the poultry they may have to eat, about their hunger, and what their mother will cook. But most of all, he dreams of the day he'll return, imagining the train ride home, picturing how much the children will have grown. But behind every line is the shadow of reality. In March 1945, Slovenia was a collapsing front. The partisans were attacking daily. The Soviets were closing in from the east. German forces across the Balkans were retreating in chaos. Units like the one Inanga served in, local police formations stationed in rear areas, were among the last to pull out. Many were cut off. Some were captured by partisans. Others simply disappeared. We don't know what happened to Inanga. There is no record of his fate. But we know where he was and when, and we know what he chose to send: a letter to his wife, his son, and his daughter. No bitterness, no violence, just a quiet moment of humanity in the final days of a collapsing world. This may be all that's left of him, a father's voice saved in ink. So here we have another letter, this one sent in February 1944 by a man named Feldwebel Gschwandner. He was a sergeant in the German army, writing to his family back home in Feichten an der Alz, a small village in rural Bavaria. The envelope is addressed simply, Family Richard Gschwandner. No formalities, no military rank, just a man writing home to the people waiting for him. Now, there's something a little unusual about this one. The unit stamp says Landesschützen Ramsau, which tells us he wasn't part of a frontline combat unit. The Landesschützen were regional guard troops, often older men, reservists, or soldiers recovering from wounds. They were used for their rear area duties like guarding prisoners, securing railways, or staffing camps deep inside Germany. The postmark is from Altenmarkt, dated February 26, 1944. That's interesting because Altenmarkt is right next to Feichten, the destination, not the sender's base. On the back he lists Neuenstein in the district of Öhringen as his station. That's over 300 kilometers away in southwest Germany. So how did this letter end up being posted so close to home? The most likely answer is simple and deeply human. He was passing through, maybe on leave, maybe in transit, maybe just close enough to drop the letter off in person, or to make sure it arrived quickly. In a time when letters could take days or even weeks, walking it to the next town's post office might have been the surest way to get it home. There's no combat unit here, no Eastern Front, no SS markings, just a Feldwebel, late in the war, posting a letter near his home village. We don't know if he ever made it back, but we know he was close, at least for a moment. Dear Rosa, dear Palmina, as you can see from the date and from this letter, I've been overcome once again by a deep sense of longing, and something happened here recently that shook me quite a bit. It wasn't pleasant, but God is still God, and he governs justly even when we don't understand it. Sometimes we simply have to accept the fate we've been given, even when it's difficult. On Wednesday, I found myself thinking constantly of Geldorf. I felt deeply homesick. I spent 22 months there, and I'll always think fondly of those days. The evenings were always so peaceful and warm. It felt like home. Honestly, I still wish I had been sent back to Geldorf. Then, at least, I would be close to all of you during this time. But sadly, nothing can be changed now. As much as I fought against the transfer and tried to stay, it didn't help. I've had to accept it and make peace with where I am now. I hope that both of you are healthy and doing well. Rosa, please take care of yourself and look after your health. And Palmina, too. You must also be careful and take care of yourself as much as possible. Nothing is worth it if one's health is lost. I also want to thank you for your recent letter, especially the part about dear Rudolf. It means a lot to me. You mentioned that he's been examined for the Labour Service, but he's been deferred until August 1st. That is truly good news. With any luck, the war will be over by then. Last night I dreamed of our dear Otto. In the dream I was on leave and we were all together, you, me, Palmina and Rudolf, sitting in the living room. Suddenly, the door opened and Otto walked in, smiling. He said, "So, now I'm mine again." He took off his military coat, laid it down on the bed, the spot I always use, and sat down with us. He laughed so joyfully and said, "You probably thought I wasn't coming back, but the old one upstairs isn't so helpless, so he knows what he's doing when it matters." The room was filled with such happiness, and when I woke up, I held on to that feeling, because I believe it will come true. I believe God will watch over Otto, protect him, and send him back to us. Amen. This letter, written in February 1944, captures a deeply human moment in the life of a German family during the final phase of the war. The sender, Feldwebel Gschwandtner, writes from Neuenstein, not from the front, but from a town in southwest Germany. His rank and tone suggest he was serving in a rear area administrative role, and his listed address, Schlossstrasse 9, places him near or even inside the historic Neuenstein castle. During the war, parts of the castle were used by local authorities and the Wehrmacht. It's likely that as a senior non-commissioned officer, he was stationed there in a support or coordination role. But despite his safe location, the emotional weight of the war presses into every line of his letter. On the second page, he shares a small piece of good news. His son Rudolf has been deferred from compulsory labour service until August 1st. He writes, "Hopefully the war will be over by then." That single line speaks volumes. It's a father's hope, quiet, desperate, and ultimately misplaced. Because the war did not end in August. By then, the Allies had already landed in Normandy, the Eastern Front was collapsing, and boys like Rudolf were being swept up and thrown into the chaos of late 1944. The most moving part of the letter is his dream about Otto. In it, Otto walks through the door, takes off his coat, smiles, and says, "You thought I wasn't coming back?" It's an intimate, vivid dream, not just a wish, but a subconscious reckoning with fear. This wasn't just longing, it was dread. The kind of fear that settled in every family with a son at the front, a fear sharpened by every knock on the door, every envelope stamped Feldpost, every rumour from the East. The dream is a clear emotional coping mechanism, a fragile hope that Otto was still alive. We don't know for certain who Otto was, a son, a brother, perhaps a close family friend, but the way the father writes about him and the way he mentions him alongside his children and wife makes it very likely that Otto was his eldest son, already serving in the army, possibly on the Eastern Front. And as for Gschwandtner himself, the man who wrote the letter, we can't say for sure what happened. He wasn't on the front and he may have survived the war, but his tone is one of resignation. He knows the world around him is collapsing slowly and uncontrollably. He dreams of peace. He writes of home. He clings to simple joys. Warm evenings in Geldorf, apples in a package, a boy studying his multiplication tables. This letter may be all that remains of him. A few pages of careful handwriting, a glimpse into his fears, his hopes, and his longing to keep his family together. even as everything else around them was falling apart. So here we have another original wartime letter, this one postmarked November 10th, 1942, from the quiet mountain town of Bischofsgrün in northern Bavaria. It's addressed to Frau Anneliese Hauth, living at the Pfarrhaus, the village parsonage, in Unternesselbach, a small rural community in Middle Franconia. That one word, Pfarrhaus, tells us everything we need to know about the recipient. This letter was sent to the home of the local Protestant pastor. Anneliese was almost certainly the pastor's wife, or perhaps his daughter. In villages like Unternesselbach, the pastor's family held a respected, stabilizing role, not just in religious life, but in community morale. They were the ones who prayed over the wounded, consoled grieving mothers, and stood beside villagers as telegrams from the front arrived. The envelope itself bears 2 6-pfennig Hitler stamps, and was stamped at 6 p.m., just as dusk was settling over Bischofsgrün. At that time, the town was known for its lazarets, military hospitals and convalescent homes. Many of its inns and health resorts had been repurposed to house recovering soldiers or evacuees. We don't know the name of the sender, but the location gives us clues. Whoever wrote this letter was likely recovering from illness or wounds, or perhaps visiting someone who was. It might have been a soldier, a relative, or even a former parishioner reaching out from a distance, writing back to the pastor's wife with gratitude, news, or concern. And then there's the date, November 1942. At the time this letter was mailed, the war was quietly beginning to turn. Just days later, on the Eastern Front, the Red Army would launch Operation Uranus, the Soviet counteroffensive that would surround the German Sixth Army at Stalingrad. The front was unravelling, but in rural Bavaria, the war still felt far away. Life moved slowly, letters arrived by bicycle or train. The mountains were quiet. In this envelope is a snapshot from that moment, a letter written from one peaceful place to another while far to the east, the storm was already breaking. Bischofsgrün, November 8, 1942. My dear Anneliese, it wasn't possible for me to write sooner, but I want to express my sincerest condolences for the terrible loss you've suffered. There are no real words of thanks or comfort when the dearest thing we have is taken from us. But we still have our dear children, and I truly believe that God will help us, so that we don't go under even when it feels like everything is slipping away. You must be strong, dear Anneliese, strong enough to carry this heavy grief. Try to take comfort in knowing that you're not alone, that many other women are going through the same pain right now. You and I, we've been good friends, and now we are walking the same hard road. You have your 3 dear boys. They will help you through this. They will be your reason to carry on, just as mine are for me. Tell me, how are you and your loved ones doing? We are healthy, thank God. But the business brings many worries these days. Your brother Hermann visited us this summer with his family, and I was so glad. In the evenings we talked for hours, and remembering the old days. Dear Anneliese, you must come visit us sometime. I'll make sure there's a room ready for you. It would make me very happy if you came back to Bischofsgrün next summer with your 3 boys. I have 40 girls from Hamburg staying at the house now, and I'm very satisfied with them. At least, there's always something going on. Here in Bischofsgrün, several more men have fallen recently. Hans from the Rabenstein family was killed in Africa. Margaret Jagel, next door to the parsonage where the young Wiesen Kaiser she was courting, he has also fallen. And a young man named Weisfloh from the Glasermühle has also died. All 3 death notices came in just the last week. Your dear mother must be with you now, I imagine. Are you staying in Unternesselbach, or will you be moving to Erlangen as well? If you find time, please write to me again. It's been snowing here all day. My dear Anneliese, stay healthy, stay strong, and hold your loved ones close. You are in my thoughts every day. Many warm greetings to you from your Maya. Finding loose photographs inside this condolence letter from November 1942 is not incidental. It is deeply significant. In wartime Germany, personal photographs were rarely mailed casually. They were kept in wallets, tunics, bedside drawers, or sent only when their return carried meaning. The fact that these photographs were enclosed with a letter expressing sympathy for a great stroke of fate strongly suggests that they are connected directly to the loss Maya is addressing. The setting matters. Maya writes from Bischofsgrün, a mountain town known during the war for its lazarets, military hospitals and recovery homes. Many wounded soldiers were transported there from the front to convalesce. Some recovered, many did not. When a soldier died away from home, his personal effects were often gathered by hospital staff or acquaintances and returned to the family. Letters, wallets, and photographs were among the few tangible remnants left behind. The first and most likely explanation is that these photographs belonged to Anneliese's husband, who may have been wounded and sent to Bischofsgrün, where Maya could visit him or look after his affairs. If he died there, these images may have been found among his belongings and enclosed by Maya, so they could be returned to his widow. This was a common practice. Photographs were often the most precious items a soldier carried, and returning them was seen as a final act of dignity. The second possibility is that the photographs relate to the other men mentioned in the letter, the neighbours' sons whose deaths had just been announced. Maya lists several young men who had recently fallen, including one killed in Africa. In close-knit rural communities, photographs were sometimes shared or passed along, so families could remember sons who died far from home. In this case, the images may have served as memorials, a way to give faces to names that would otherwise vanish into casualty lists. The third possibility is more intimate, and perhaps the most painful. These may be photographs from earlier, happier years, images of Anneliese's husband when he was still healthy, relaxed, and alive. Maya writes about exchanging memories and old times, about the weight of grief shared by women across Germany. Sending these photographs may have been her way of reminding Anneliese not only of how her husband died, but of who he was before the war reduced him to a telegram and a grave. The photograph of the two soldiers standing on the steps is especially haunting. They are not posed as heroes, they are not marching or saluting. They stand casually, almost comfortably, as if this moment existed outside the war. Their posture is relaxed, their faces are calm. Nothing in the image suggests urgency, fear, or death. And yet, we are reading this image through the lens of loss. One or both of these men may already be dead by the time the photograph reaches Anneliese's hands. That contrast is the tragedy. The photograph captures a moment when the future still existed. The letter tells us that future is gone. These are not anonymous soldiers frozen in time. They are likely the very men Anneliese is grieving, men who once stood on steps, laughed, waited, and believed they would return home. When these photographs were placed inside the envelope, they became more than images. They became relics, final witnesses, proof that someone lived, was seen, and was loved. For Anneliese, opening this letter would not have been just an act of reading. It would have been an act of mourning, unfolding paper, touching faces, and confronting the irreversible distance between memory and reality. This is what makes the envelope so powerful. It does not only carry words of comfort, it carries the past itself. Returned to a widow in silence. This letter was sent to Frau Else Rühle, addressed to the small village of Kladingen, just south of Bremen in northern Germany. The routing note Über Bremen 5 confirms that mail bound for Kladingen passed through the larger city's sorting system. In this case, the envelope is addressed with typical wartime formality. No street name, just the village name, a postal station, and the woman's full title as Frau. A clear indication that she was likely the wife of a soldier serving in the armed forces. But what makes this envelope stand out is the round military stamp printed on the front. Inside the stamp is a Feldpost number beginning with the letter L. That L is the key. It marks this as Luftwaffe Field Post, a letter routed through the Air Force postal system. While the Army and SS used their own respective networks, the Luftwaffe maintained its own lines of communication. This wasn't a soldier from an infantry trench, but someone stationed with the German Air Force. We don't yet know the sender's name or rank, but we know this. By the time this letter was sent, the Luftwaffe was being stretched thin. As the war dragged on, Luftwaffe personnel serve not only in airfields and logistics, but also in flak batteries, communication stations, and even ground support roles far from home. Eastern Front, December 17th, 1944. My dear sweet Else, my dear little Inga. At last, after a few days, I found time to write you a few lines again. You're probably already waiting for mail from me. First, I have some good news. I received your lovely Christmas package on December 13th. It arrived nice and early, maybe even too early, but that's just how it is when parcels have to be sent so far in advance. I was very happy when it arrived, better a little early than too late. I'm saving a piece of cake from it for Christmas, just in case there's nothing else. It tastes very good. Please don't take it badly that I didn't thank you immediately. Things have been a bit chaotic. I wanted to let you know as soon as I could. Maybe you can already guess why I haven't written sooner. We were moved again. That happened during the night of December 14th. Pitch black, of course. You can imagine how comfortable that was. The best part came afterward. We lay the whole day on the ramp at the train station, and only at night were we finally loaded onto the train. Again, in total darkness. It was all because the railway wasn't ready. They didn't bring the wagons forward. Nothing works properly anymore. We're now stationed about 50 kilometers southeast of Litzmannstadt at an airfield, and just like always, when you arrive, there's nothing there. They drop you in the middle of an open field, and that's that, just 1 week before Christmas. They gave us one of those finished tents meant for 12 men. By pure chance, we found a construction shack nearby that we're allowed to use. So now, at least, we can build a bit and try to stay warm. Still, we won't be thinking much about celebrating Christmas this year. It's simply too miserable out here. Things are getting worse and worse. All we're missing now is a big pile of snow. And then we'll really have the full package. It's already freezing quite a bit, but to be honest, that's better than rain. At least your boots stay clean. If only this whole miserable mess would finally come to an end. But how many times have we said that by now? Mail will stop for a few days too until it's rerouted to this new position. Things are pretty thin, but we did receive your packages and you should be glad they made it. How are things back home? Hopefully all right. You've got water in the cellar again. That's probably from all the heavy rain. It must be pressing through the wall. It'll probably go down again once the groundwater level drops. Dear Elsa, I'll finish here for now. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Next time I'll write a little more. Stay healthy and keep your spirits up. Many warm greetings and kisses from your dear husband and loving father, Richard. And so, as we come to the end of this journey through these letters, scattered across time, towns, battlefields and hearts, we're left with a haunting truth. Not of combat or carnage, but of something quieter, more enduring, the unbroken thread between frontline and family. What strikes us time and again is how calm these letters are, even when written from frozen fields outside Oral, or from airstrips southeast of Łódź, or in the final weeks before collapse in Slovenia. They rarely dwell on violence, they rarely mention death, and that wasn't an accident. Most German soldiers, regardless of their rank or branch, whether in the SS, the Luftwaffe, or the Wehrmacht, made an unspoken decision when writing home. Do not burden the family. Their mothers were already standing in queues for bread. Their wives were raising children in towns bombed to rubble. Their sons and daughters were growing up without them. So, the last thing any soldier wanted to do was add fear to their suffering. So they softened the truth. They spoke about snow, not blood, about socks, not death, about missed birthdays, not comrades in shallow graves. They joked about bad food, they shared dreams, they mentioned old friends, and they always sent their love. The silence speaks volumes. Behind every letter was a censorship officer, of course, someone reading, redacting, checking. But more powerful than the censor was the writer himself. He chose what not to say, not out of obedience, but out of love. And yet, if you read between the lines, in the way a man describes the cold, or how long it's been since the last letter arrived, or how quiet things are at night, you can hear the war anyway. Not in what's written, but in what isn't. And then there's the mail system itself. What an incredible machine it was. At the height of the war, over 2 billion Feldpost items were sent annually by the German military postal service. From the depths of Russia to the sands of North Africa, from remote bunkers to occupied cities, tens of millions of letters and packages moved across the continent, daily. And somehow, astonishingly, most of them arrived. In the middle of chaos, where rail lines were bombed and roads were cratered, where units moved constantly and towns changed hands overnight, the mail kept moving. Coded field post numbers ensured secrecy. Special stamps and seals marked official units. Soldiers received newspapers, packages, and handwritten notes from home, and they replied, often faithfully, right up until the very end. Even in April 1945, when cities were burning and defeat was certain, letters were still being sent. Fathers were still writing to sons, husbands still trying to reach their wives. Some, knowing they wouldn't return, folded photographs into the envelope, hoping they'd outlive them, and in many cases, they did. Because some of those very photographs, some of those letters are now in front of us. Faded ink, torn edges, scribbled fractions on the back of an envelope where a boy once did his homework. But behind every page is a person, a voice, a moment of stillness before history crashed through the door. These aren't war stories in the cinematic sense, they are war stories in the real sense. Fragments of hope, fear, routine, and love, written by people who could not know what would happen next. That's what makes them so powerful. So if you've made it this far, thank you, not just for watching, but for listening. These letters were never meant for us, and yet here we are, reading them decades later. Because somehow they survived the war, even when so many of their authors did not. And in a way, that means a part of them still lives.